Welcome, lovely teachers, to another Vibrant Music Teacher Chat. This is a weekly show here on YouTube where we talk about all the fun things to do with music teaching, and we have a lot to crack on with today. We're talking about practice incentives as our main topic, so I would love your thoughts on that. I have a few bits of news before we get to that. Number one, next week there won't be a live show, there'll be a video posted at the same time. So if you get to next week and you're wondering, hey, where's my weekly live chat? It's not on next week because it's a week off of teaching here in Ireland, so I keep the same schedule as my teaching schedule for these chats. But there will be a fun video that I think you're going to love, which will go out on YouTube at the same time as this normal show. So that's next week. That's our little PSA. Tomorrow we have a webinar, and that's the link to sign up, vibrantmusicteaching.com/live. It's all about practice related to the topic we're talking about today. So if you haven't signed up for that, you definitely should. There'll be a replay link, of course, afterwards. So just go to vibrantmusicteaching.com/live. You'll see the time that it's live at, but you'll also get the replay link if you sign up. So if that time doesn't suit you, by the way, it's the same time as this, but tomorrow. If that time doesn't suit you, then you can always catch it on the replay. I was putting the finishing touches on my slides for that today, so I'm really looking forward to that session tomorrow. I hope lots of you can make that one. And I wanted to say a quick congratulations to those that just finished the assignment sprint challenge that we were running last week. So if you did that and you put in the work and you've got your notes drafted or at least started, well done. You did it. You did great. And yeah, the Facebook group will stay up for those that were asking for a few more weeks at least, to give you some time in case there's things you want to go through or check in there. We never shut them down straight away, so don't worry too much about that. But congratulations on any work you managed to get done towards your assignment note bank. And then my last little news segment is about the Vibrant Music Teaching hints that I've started giving out. So every month on Vibrant Music Teaching, we publish 5 new resources in our library. 5 new things every single month. And they're always a mixture of different things, different levels of students, different genres of things. And I thought it would be fun here on the show to start giving you some hints as to what's coming out for members that are watching. So, first hint, one of the resources will involve a Canadian composer. Second hint, one of the resources will involve a minor challenge. That's probably the most obvious hint. And the less cryptic one is that one of them will give your students a unique rhythm perspective. So we've got a Canadian composer, a minor challenge, and a unique rhythm perspective. Maybe you'll have some guesses on what those are going to be. Those will be hitting the library next week because they come out on the 1st of every month. So not too long to wait now. In the meantime, members, if you haven't dived into our Halloween section in the library, now would be a great time to do that, to play some of our ghouly and ghosty games in the library. So there's lots there to choose from the beginner level up to intermediate with Halloween-y type themes. So today I want to talk to you about practice incentives, and I'm going to break the news right away that I'm not about to share the latest, greatest, most amazing practice incentive with you. That's not what's going to happen. I'm sorry if you thought that that's what you're in for, but that's not the deal here. If you want a super fun themed practice incentive, there are tons of them you can find online. But I actually want you today to come with me on a little journey. Even if you're not sure you're going to agree with me, just come with me. Keep an open mind. That's what teachers should have, right? And let's think about whether we want practice incentives for our students and the goals we actually have for our students and whether they line up with what we're doing with practice. Okay? So, I want us all to agree on something right off the bat. Even if you disagree with me about the practice incentive thing and continue to by the end and you want to do your sticker charts, okay. But let's agree on something first, yes? Start on a friendly note. What we all want, all of us, I think, someone tell me in the chat if you agree with this. We all want our students to practice consistently. Am I right? We want them to practice fairly consistently, regularly. I think we can agree on that. Give me a yes or an emoji of your choice in the chat if you do. Okay? Second thing I'm hoping we can all agree on is that we want them to practice consistently because we want them to make good progress towards becoming awesome musicians. Right? Is that why we want to do it? We want them to make good progress, and that's why we want consistent practice. Am I right? Now, what your definition of a wonderful musician, of the end product you want, might be different. It might involve playing from lead sheets. It might involve extremely good technique. It might involve both those things, plus a whole other array of things that you want for your students. So we're not talking about that definition today, where you're headed. But most things that we want for our students take practice so that we can make progress towards becoming great musicians, right? So, if that is in fact the ideal situation, let's think about that. We want them to make good progress. We want them to practice consistently. And we want them to do that over the long term. Am I right? Because we know to become a great musician, whatever type of music you want to play and whatever your definition of that is, to become a great musician takes a long time. Fixing a practice problem for a few weeks or a few months is not going to achieve anything, is it? I mean, it'll achieve something in the very short term, but in the long term, that's what counts. It's the overall practice over years that we're looking for. Yes? Hope we're all still on the same page so far. If you're kind of humming and hawing about that, think about this. If you have a student that practices regularly, and then they come in one week and they say, so sorry, or they just say, this week was not a good practice week for me. Whether they have a good reason or a poor reason, whatever. This week was not good for me, for practicing. But they normally practice. Do you get cross with that student? Are you annoyed with them? If they have one bad practice week? I don't say boo to them. I just say, okay, no problem. We all have weeks like that, something like that. Because we do. I mean, that's reality. Everybody's human. We're going to have blips. Things are going to come up. We're going to have weeks where we're just forgetful, not in the right frame of mind, whatever happens. But if they're practicing pretty consistently overall, a week here or there doesn't make a big difference to us, does it? So it's about the long term, the overall trend. So here's the thing. Practice competitions, leaderboards, rewards, tracking, incentives, and Beethoven bucks, or Mozart money, don't achieve this. They don't achieve the long-term goal. That's what I'm going to argue with you today. And maybe you already agree with me. Maybe you're totally into your Beethoven bucks. But keep hearing me out, okay? Let's think it through. So I want you to imagine that we have a studio and about 25% of our students practice consistently. They're steady practicers, okay? Let me know if this resonates with your studio, by the way, but it's just an example. So we'll call them Group 1, the consistent practicers. Group 2, about another quarter, are inconsistent practicers. They're a bit up and down. They practice a bit, maybe once or twice during the week, or maybe they have great weeks and then off weeks. They're kind of up and down students. So we'll call them Group 2. They're the inconsistent, right? So we've got Group 1, consistent, Group 2, inconsistent. And then let's say in your studio, 50% the rest of the studio just basically don't practice at all or seldom practice. So we've got consistent, inconsistent, and never or almost never. Group 1, Group 2, Group 3. Okay, now let's say you start a practice program. And it's called Dalmation Dots. Okay? It's going to be super fun. So you start this program and you get a big white dog statue. Picture, well, this is what I picture anyway. You know the white dog from Friends? That's what's in my head. Okay, so you get that and you put it outside the front of your studio or in the waiting room or something like that in the entryway. And your students, every time they have a good week of practice, they get to add a black dot to that white dog. So they're gradually making him a Dalmatian. And you explain this to all your students the first week and what the goal is going to be, that they practice a certain number of minutes in the week or maybe a certain number of days, or their parents tick off their days, whatever the system is. There's some parameter for that, and if they do it, they add the black sticker to the white dog. And you explain this to your students, and most of them think it sounds so fun. They think it's so cute. Oh my gosh, he's going to be all Dalmatian-y by the end, and that's so cute. Okay, great. What do you think happens with those 3 groups of students? Do they all immediately start practicing better? No, we're real here, right? You know that's not going to happen. So, what happens? Well, the students who were in the group 1, the consistent students, they keep practicing consistently, probably. So they add the black sticker to the Dalmatian dog that isn't Dalmatian yet every week. Group 2, the inconsistent practicers, and maybe some of group 3 who don't practice at all, they start to practice more consistently for a few weeks. Maybe let's be generous and say 2 months. They practice more consistently, they add those dots. And some of the students aren't affected by this at all, but you think, hey, we're doing pretty well. I'm getting practice out of students who normally don't practice. This is great. Might not be everyone, but it is making an impact. Okay. Let's take this all the way through though. So it works for a few weeks, maybe 2 months, for some of these students who weren't practicing already. Now the cost to them, those are the students in group 2 who were inconsistent practicers and group 3 who basically never practiced at all. The students who take you up on that for a couple of months, the cost to them is when they drop off, because they're going to drop off a cliff. I'm sorry, but they are. They're not going to be motivated by adding black stickers for the whole year, or that's a very rare student who is, okay? So they're going to fall off the cliff. And now you're in a situation where for weeks on end, for months on end, students are coming in and they have not practiced. And you have to hold them accountable to that because you said that's the system. So you don't let them put the black dot on the dog because it wouldn't make sense if you did, right? Otherwise, what are we doing this for? So you don't let them put the black dot on the dog. And they feel like they're failing. They fail. And what we hope is that the next week they do better. But honestly, I haven't found that to be the case. So they just go back to the way they were practicing before. The ones who almost never practiced, week after week, they come in, they can't put a sticker on the dog. The ones who were up and down, they're still up and down. So some weeks they can, some weeks they can't. And every week, those students are coming into your studio and seeing that dog who is increasing his spots. They're seeing this dog and they're feeling like, I'm failing. Or I'm not good at music. Look at what these other students are doing. I'm not musical, right? These are the thoughts they're having. And it's not accurate. We know they just need to practice. And that's what we were trying to motivate them to do. So we had the best of intentions. But they're getting this constant reminder that they're not getting as far as the other students, which isn't a great lesson for them. So some of these students it works for and they fall off a cliff. Some keeps working for a bit longer and they still fall off a cliff. No one is going to be motivated by forever. I'm not going to say no one. Almost no one. by putting spots on a dog. Okay? Now, let's go back to group 1. Because they're the ones who are adding all these spots to this dog. Is everyone still picturing the dog? I hope you are. Keep that dog in your mind. The dog is increasing his spots every week. And most of that work, the black dots that are getting added, most of those are coming from group 1. Your consistent practicers who were already consistent practicers. Yes, they're doing all of the legwork. Okay, so what's happening to them is they're now getting a reward. And yes, putting a sticker on a dog may not seem like a reward, but it is. It's putting the value outside of themselves. So they're getting a reward for something that they were doing anyway. What do you think happens to them? For some of them, this is going to teach them the lesson that they are practicing because they're getting a reward. So they used to practice just because. Maybe because they like the music. Maybe because their parents told them to. Maybe because they just are rule followers. And now they're getting a reward for that behavior. So let's take this back to you. Let's say you iron your partner's shirts because they work in a starched up corporate environment and they just happen to hate ironing so much. So that's one of the things that you do as part of your partnership, right? So you iron their shirts and really you're more than happy to do it. Personally, I don't mind ironing that much. It's never been my least favorite task, chore. So you're ironing their shirts. And you're sitting in front of the TV each evening or an evening a week, ironing a few shirts. And you think, it's not a big deal. I'm happy to help them out. And then your partner comes home one day from work and they say, listen, I really appreciate you ironing these shirts for me. And I want to give you a little gift to say thank you. So every week that you iron my shirts, I'm going to give you a $20 Starbucks gift card. Okay, how do you feel about this situation? That's my question. You were ironing the shirts, you were doing it for free, and now your partner is saying they're going to give you a Starbucks gift card for ironing their shirts. How do you feel about ironing the shirts now? I'll tell you how I would feel. I'd feel resentful. I'd be like, well, it's actually, an hour's work. Do you think I only make $20 an hour? Or whatever. I just would feel like, where did you come up with this equation? I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart. I'm doing this because I care about you. And now you're offering to pay me for it. And then take that a step further. Let's say they do that for 2 months and then they stop. Wouldn't you stop ironing their shirts? I would. The week they don't come home with the Starbucks gift card after you've gotten used to that behavior. So, maybe this gives us a little bit of information about rewards and incentives. So our student was practicing for free, not to get anything. And now we started giving them a sticker to put on a dog every time they practice. They're equating their practice now with that sticker that they're getting. So when we take the sticker away, some of them are going to be less happy to practice. Because we've taught them that they were practicing in order to get the sticker. Even though originally they were just practicing because they like learning or because whatever, some other reason. Now, before we get sidetracked, this is not about putting stickers on students' pieces or banning stickers in general. I'm talking about this specific reward for doing the practice and not for the results of the practice, for doing the practice. That's what I think is the main issue here. So, group 1, the consistent practicers, some of them will just keep going anyway. Some of them have learned that they need a reward in order to practice or started to associate that, which isn't very helpful. Group 2 and Group 3, the inconsistent and the not practice at all-ers, they probably have gone back to whatever they were doing before. So let me know if you disagree with my hypothetical outcomes of that little experiment. But that's how I've seen these things play out personally. So, what is the actual solution? Because it's actually pretty simple. It's not easy, but the actual solution is pretty simple. Good practice comes back to great communication with parents right from the start. So from the first meeting with a parent, good communication with them. You talk to them very clearly about their role in the practice routine. And then from there you follow up. You email them afterwards. I have automated email sequences that go out asking parents how practice is going, what's going on, if they need any help with anything, supporting them as they establish that routine. And then we can build it up from there. But whenever it breaks down, the solution is not to introduce a practice incentive or count up points in an app. It is to go back to the communication. And it's to keep this positive frame around practice. Because if we make it, oh, you didn't do practice, so you can't get your sticker, and that is happening every week, all we're doing is associating practice with failing. Music with failing. With getting given out to, with feeling down about yourself. And really that child has no control over the situation. It's not that they don't want to practice or that they just need motivation, right? Pushing to come up with this routine. That's usually not true in the case of a child. What they need is support at home. And they need intrinsic motivation eventually to practice by themselves, be self-motivated. But that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from having the support, having someone to establish a routine who's an adult, who's the grown-up in the situation. And when we don't have that, harping on about how they're not practicing isn't usually going to help the situation. So this is one of the reasons we have the routine reminders inside Vivid Practice, which is our new practice app. In Vivid Practice, when students first log in, it asks them to set up reminders. And this is for parents and students together to think through when they're going to practice. It is about the notification on the phone, but it's also not. It's also about having them think about, okay, where does it fit in on Monday? Where does it fit on Tuesday? Because otherwise the week just rolls on and they try to find time to practice. But when you just try to find time for something, you don't, right? So we have them set up those routine reminders. They can change them at any time. And that means they're setting an intention for when they mean to practice, for how they're going to fit this into their routine. So that's my view on practice incentives and points. That's the reason that they're not included in Vivid Practice. We include other tools to help people practice more efficiently, which we talked about last week. But what I don't do is have a point system, a leaderboard, anything like that, because I found actually it's counterproductive. And that same little thought experiment I did with the Dalmation dog, that's what happened with my students with Tanara too. Initially, some of them didn't care. And the ones who did care about the points, when they fell off that cliff, when they didn't care about the points anymore, because they'd learned, actually, I'm not really getting anything for this is a bit silly. When they learned that lesson, they fall way below where my other students are. They stop practicing at all. That was my experience. And so, harsh but true, in my opinion. That's where I stand on practice incentives. If you have any questions, general questions, I'm happy to take them now. And if you want to argue with me about practice incentives, that's okay. So I'm just checking back in with the chat, everybody. Sandra said my goal is for students to be self-motivated. I think I kind of covered how, yes, that's a great goal, but we have to get them there. And if you don't experience practice and then progress, practice and then progress, if you don't have that experience, You don't get to develop that self-motivation in most cases. Some students just naturally have it, and that's awesome, but we want to help others build that skill. So we do need some support in establishing the practice process, and then hopefully we build the self-motivation over time. My biggest concern is that I don't want to make parents feel like I'm scolding them for not having their child practice. Maybe Vivid is the magic solution. Look, it's not. I know always obvious when, when a product that I'm promoting is like our app, I think it's a solution to many things. Don't think it's going to fix that for you. What I think fixed that for me was talking about practice more often. So we talk about it at the first meeting, and then I follow up with these emails, which are very positively framed. And therefore, I'm there as a practice supporter. And parents don't feel like they can't tell me, sorry for the double negative, when their child has not practiced, right? They feel like they can come to me and say, listen, this week was just a mess. I've got no excuse, but it was just a mess. I'm sorry they haven't practiced. And I'm not going to say, yeah, well, you need to do better. Like, I'm going to say, thanks for telling me. Because it's about this long-term thing, right? And I know you feel that, but parents need to feel that. And to do that, we have to kind of frame the communication by over-communicating, I think, in the beginning, with this positive framing and this like helpful check-ins and whatever, without any tinge anywhere in it of guilt. And then they get more open with us, and that's what I found. Sarah asked, do you think that just as we need to teach our students as individuals according to their learning styles, that finding a practice routine / challenge that works for each child? Look, we have to help them find a routine that works for them, for sure, and their parents are a big part of that. So just saying like practice at 4 p.m. is obviously not going to work for every child. Also, practicing all in one go is not going to work for every child. So I give parents lots of examples and information about like, oh, some kids practice half before school and half after school. Some do it all in one chunk. Some practice longer on 4 days a week. So giving different examples of how it might fit in their routine. But the thing about the learning styles thing is, I don't want to get into it too much now unless people want to unpack that, but the whole like visual learner, auditory learner, a lot of that is being debunked in terms of not that people are those things or have those preferences, but in terms of like catering, you know, we shouldn't be teaching someone who's a visual learner entirely by visuals. Actually, for everyone, as far as I understand the research, the best solution is to actually incorporate all of these different learning modalities. So that's just a side note, but since you mentioned it. But yeah, I think we adapt to each family and each routine, and we treat everyone as a person. And for some students, that's going to mean a lot less practice. Like for a lot of my neurodivergent students, that means a lot less practice, and it's purely because they have too much schoolwork to get through. So their homework from school takes them longer than the other kids in their class. I don't think anyone should be assigned homework at all, but that's a whole other story. So they're struggling through that for hours. They just have less time to practice than the other kids do. And we have to accept that and take them where they are. Yeah, different practice strategies is great. For me, it goes routine, variety, then strategy. And I think too often as teachers, we want to focus on the strategy because that's where we're at with practice. We're like, I wish I knew about this practice strategy and that one earlier. At least that's how I feel. And yet, if the student doesn't have a routine, a strategy is useless. Because if you're not practicing, strategizing that practice does nothing, does it? So I think just understanding those stages made a big difference for me as well. Causing those students who don't have the support at home to feel discouraged. Yes, that's what it goes back to. It's their natural grit, their routine that they happen to be in, whether that's because of schoolwork or just they have a lot of activities / they don't or whatever, and their natural inclinations, and then it's the parental support. maybe through no fault of the parent. Maybe they have to work all the time. You know, it's not always something that the parent can fix. But guilting never got anyone anywhere. If you're referring to what Juliet said about practice games, probably, I think, Lynn, then those are inside Vibrant Music Teaching. So that's my membership. It's at vibrantmusicteaching.com. Hope that helps. Okay, folks. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you for the lovely chats. Thank you for hearing me out on my little soapbox. And I hope you're with me. But also, I'm happy to continue the chat if you totally disagree with me. So you can find me and talk to me about that. I like to keep, as much as possible, an open mind and really reconsider things that I've done a certain way in the past. And I don't actually take away those resources, say, from my blog. Like you might find practice incentives up there from when I used to do that. And I've moved away and in a different direction and towards the challenges and stuff. But I think that's part of the honesty and the growth as a teacher is to leave these things up, so I don't always take them away. So sometimes I'll contradict myself, but that's part of learning, in my opinion. I hope you all enjoyed that. No live show next week, but there will be a video at the same time that you can look forward to. I hope you'll check out Vivid Practice if you're looking for a practice solution. Loads more info on our website, which is vividpractice.com, and you can email us about that as well, or chat to me on Instagram or wherever suits you. In the meantime, I'll see you in a couple of weeks, and I hope you have fantastic lessons full of practicing students who don't need any incentives. See you later.